TreShow people. It's been a minute. How y'all doing? I'll give y'all a chance to respond. Alright, we doing good in the house. So, here we go. Nowadays, Madden 22 is out. So that's why y'all didn't get a show. I was, quote unquote, just trying to give y'all a good review. But I was just playing that shit, bro. I just cussed in the first minute. It's alright. I was just playing that, bro. You know how it goes, man. Guy like me, Madden every year, 2K every year. Those days are really holidays. So I had to just sit down and grind for a week, man. So hope y'all don't mind the absence. We back on the grind though. So today we're just gonna talk about a couple things. Talking about the NBA, talk about the NFL. We're gonna talk about Madden a little bit. Y'all know how it go. So let's start with some real quick NFL news. So first of all, today's a sad day for it's been a sad couple of days for Jaguar fans. First of all, Tim Tebow got cut. I know we're all surprised by that, but Tebow got cut, and today we found out that former Clemson superstar Travis Etienne is going to miss the whole season with the Liz Frank foot injury. Now, this is just upsetting because Travis Etienne was my favorite running back coming out of the class. I've always liked Travis. You know, I'm an LSU fan, so we've had our battles, but I've liked Travis for at least 3 years now. He's always been one of my favorite running backs to watch. And I was pretty upset that he didn't come out last year because I wanted him to come out last year. But you know how it go, the whole draft stock game. So he had to play the game. He had to do the dash. So he came out this year, and he was getting his footing, pun intended, and then he suffers his foot injury last game against New Orleans, ironically. And so, it's disappointing. Him and Trevor Lawrence obviously played together in college, so that was supposed to be a pretty big thing, is having them together. So it's disappointing to see that they're not gonna be able to have that same level of chemistry, and it's definitely gonna help or hurt Trevor Lawrence not having that security blanket and not feeling so comfortable with someone that he played with before. And it's just disappointing. But at the same time, James Robinson still exists, so the Jags offense isn't going to be hurting that much. So, it's just one of those things that as a fan I'm disappointed about, because Travis Etienne is one of the guys that I really like. Next up, we have Justin Fields will not be starting for the Bears. This is one of those things that's just a matter of time. Justin Fields is the best quarterback on the Bears. Andy Dalton, he was promised the job, and that's why he's going to start week 1, week 2, probably week 3. Week 4 might be the first time that's in question. If you look at the schedule, the Bears open with the Rams. So no surprise that the Bears are holding off on starting Justin Fields against Aaron Donald. And then they play the Bills. Or I was looking at preseason. The Bengals would be a good place for him to start. We'll see what happens with Joe Burrow. But, the Bengals are still the Bengals. They picked like 4th or 5th last year for a reason. And then they play the Browns. And then they have a pretty easy stretch here with their Lions and then the Raiders. The Lions, I have no faith that Jared Goff will be a good quarterback anymore. Or at all. Honestly, if he was a good quarterback, he'd still be in LA right now. And then we don't know what the Raiders are going to look like. It's early season, October Raiders, so probably going to be a tough game. You know how the Raiders play in October and November. And then they play the Packers, the Bucks, and the 49ers, and then the Steelers. So I say he starts week 3 or week 4, week 4 or week 5 against the Lions or the Raiders. And if he doesn't play then maybe you go week 12 against the Lions, because after that it's the Packers, the Bucks, the 49ers, the Steelers, and then the bye week. So maybe you go bye week, prepare, another week against the Ravens to sit, and then against the Lions. Those are really the only spots where you'd want your rookie quarterback to start. Other than that, it's just going to be real tough sledding for Justin Fields and the Bears to just insert him in like that. Speaking of the Raiders, the next report is that allegedly, the Raiders contacted the Bears before signing Yannick Ngakoue about a trade for Khalil Mack. Now, thinking about this, you're like, the Raiders need pass rush. They need that superstar. I'm not sure who they would give up, but this trade makes a lot of sense in a vacuum until you realize, oh, wait, the Raiders got 3 first-round picks that turned into Josh Jacobs, Cleveland Farrell, and nobody else for Khalil Mack. They already made this trade and traded him to Chicago. The most interesting thing here is that Khalil Mack, if this trade was going to happen, the Raiders would have had to talk to Khalil Mack and make sure he wanted to come back to the organization. That's interesting because, at some point, Mack will be a free agent. Maybe he does come back to the Raiders at that point, but for now, it's just a deal. It's unsure. We're unsure whether or not the Bears even listened to the offer, if they just hung up, or if how deep talks went. But the Raiders did contact the Bears about a Khalil Mack trade. It fell through ultimately, but it is interesting, and it does have maybe some implications for the future. It's just going to be one of those things that, as Raider fans, we just kind of think about, like, what if we never traded Khalil Mack? And, it's one of those things because Khalil Mack was really that defense. I mean, nobody else on that defense was really balling out the year they won 11 games and probably should have won more and made an even deeper playoff run than they did if it wasn't for Carr breaking his leg. But you look at that team, and there's really not a whole lot of superstars on that team. Khalil Mack was great. Obviously, that goes without saying. He made All-Pro at and linebacker. And then you have Bruce Irvin, who faced a lot of singles, and so he had good numbers. Other than that, there really wasn't a whole lot of good play on that defense. Khalil Mack was the Raiders' defense that year. He made those coverage guys look good because they didn't have to cover for as long. It was a perfect storm led by Khalil Mack on that defense. I'll never forget the game he had against the Panthers. This was the year that the Panthers went to the Super Bowl. So it was coming off of that season, and the Panthers were still good. I think they were 6-2 at this time. They might have been really good, or they could have been bad the year. I forget. They were either really good or they were mediocre. But this game, they decided to play good, and Khalil Mack picked off a screen pass and took that to the house. And then with the game on the line, Khalil Mack had a strip sack of Cam Newton, and ultimately that won the Raiders the game. And that's just one of those moments from him that I'll never forget. And I really like the prospect of him coming back to the Raiders in the future. But unfortunately, or fortunately if you're a Bears fan, it's going to have to wait a couple more years at the latest. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about what I think is going to happen in the NFL. I know. I'm not an expert, but I am an expert. So listen to me. This is the Trey Show. You came here to listen to me. I am the expert here. All right. So let's talk about the NFL. So we're going to go AFC today. And for the AFC, let's start in the AFC North. In fourth place in the AFC North, I have the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, this one, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to think the Bengals will finish last in their division, but also not for the reasons you may think. So Joe Burrow psychologically is having a hard time coming back from this injury. That's going to affect him. It's going to be really hard for him to really be the same way he was last year, and it's going to be a thing. Unfortunately, I love Joe Burrow. I just said I was an LSU fan, so I want him to win, but psychologically it's going to be really hard for him to come back from this injury, and it's going to take a year. This season is going to be him battling with that. And It's just one of those things that he's gonna have to get through. The rest of the offense is amazing. However, they have Joe Mixon, who, he's an All-Pro. He's a really good running back. At receivers, they're stacked. They have Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins, and fifth pick Jamar Chase, who did not have a good game and is not having a good preseason in general. But let's not rush and immediately talk about how Jamar Chase is a bust. Let's remember and think logically here that he did not play last year. He has not played since that championship run with Joe Burrow. That was the last time he played football, and he made the jump from college to NFL. So, of course, he's struggling. He's getting his legs under him and adjusting to the speed and physicality of the NFL game. It's going to take a minute for him. He'll be right 3, 4, 5 weeks into the season. He is going to struggle at first, and that's okay. He needs to get back in football shape, and he's going to be adjusting to the speed and physicality and the mental part of the NFL game all at once. So just give Jamar Chase a minute. He'll be fine. Also, a lot of people scrutinized that pick because, Penei Sewell was on the board. But hear me out. What a lot of people don't know is that Willie Anderson, Hall of Fame tackle for the Bengals, did not like Penei Sewell. I'm not going to say he didn't like him, but in the camps they did, the workouts, he liked the guard they took in the second round, Jackson Carman, more than he liked Penei Sewell. So if you're the Bengals, you see Jamar Chase, who your quarterback played with, you take him fifth because your Hall of Fame left tackle is telling you that he likes Jackson Carman more than Penei Sewell. You're listening to your Hall of Fame left tackle. There's no, does he know what he's talking about? He played the position. You're going to listen to him. So naturally, they took Jamar Chase over Penei Sewell because that's who their insiders and that's who their scout team was telling them to take. So I don't have a problem with the pick. Could it be wrong? Yeah. But I don't have a problem with the pick personally. That's in that building. That's the guy they wanted. They got their guy, and they got Jamar Chase. You have to commend them for that. We know Jesse Bates is a baller. Moving on to the defense, you bring in Chidobe Awuzie, Mike Hilton. The Bengals made some moves this offseason, but they're still a year away. Joe Burrow's going to have to adjust. I think they need to get a new head coach in there to really take off. I don't know why Zach Taylor's still there. I don't see them winning more than 5-6 games, so that's where I put the Bengals. Next in that division will be the Steelers. The Steelers aren't going to be that much better than the Bengals next year. Hot take, Steelers Twitter, Steelers YouTube comments are finna cancel me, but Ben is washed. Ben Roethlisberger looked bad to end the year. And as a Saints fan, it reminded me of when the Saints started 13-1. No, not 13-1. We were like 9-1, 10-2, something like. Oh, it was 10-2, 11-3, 12. We were like 11-3 that year, or 11-2, and then there was that Thursday night game against the Cowboys in which the Cowboys beat the Saints up. We lost 13-10, and Drew Brees really wasn't the same after that game. If you watch the way he played, it was really downhill from there. The rest of that year, 2018 and 2019, 2020, or 20, all of 20, the rest of 2018, all of 2019, all of 2020. And that's how Big Ben looked at the end of last year. I mean, they were 13-0. They lose to Washington, and then they go on to lose 3 out of their last 4. And then the Browns completely embarrassed the Steelers. Juju said it. The Browns are the Browns. The Steelers were supposed to kill them. That's like their little brother. They lost to their little brother. And Ben was a huge part of that. Their defense regressed. You lose Mike Hilton. The rest of the defense gets older. I like the pick of Najee Harris, but I'm not really a guy to take running backs early, especially when you have other holes. Their receivers, I don't know that they want to be receivers. They want to be TikTok stars. Like, it is what it is. There's not a whole lot of receivers or anyone in the NFL really who have that level of celebrity that early. I mean, Chase Claypool is like Tyler Hero. He's more of a celebrity than an athlete. And I think that doesn't really translate. You know, Tyler Hero really struggled this year because he chose to be an athlete, or he chose to be a celebrity over being an NBA player. And it's a real thing when you have that level of celebrity before you made it, guys get jealous. So next year, Juju, Chase Claypool, they're going to get eyes on them, and they're going to get everyone's best because it's jealousy. That's what it is. When you have that level of celebrity without doing anything, you're going to deal with that. Second place and first place in the NFC North. If you told me that you would pick the other team to finish first, I wouldn't fault you. I think they're interchangeable, and I think it's only going to be 1 or 2 games separating them. I think the Bengals win 5-6 games, 4-5-6 games. I think the Steelers are around 500, 7-10, 8-9 this year. I think the Browns finish second. I think the Browns finish with 4-5 losses, and the Ravens probably finish with 3 or 4 losses. But, like I said, if you told me that division came down to the tiebreakers and week 17 games, or that division came down to head-to-head, who gets the split, who gets the sweep, who scores more points, that wouldn't surprise me at all. But when I look at the Ravens, I see Lamar Jackson coming into his 3rd season as a starter. I see there's no more backfield games. J.K. Dobbins is the guy now. It's unequivocal. J.K. Dobbins is the starter. He's not splitting carries. He's not wondering about Mark Ingram, none of that. He is the starter now. Gus Edwards will still be there. They still have Ricard. And then when you look at the receivers, I like to pick Rashad Bateman a lot. Rashad Bateman he really could be the best receiver in that class. As off as that sounds, Rashad Bateman is really good at what he does. Hollywood Brown, he's a burner. He's going to do his thing. You bring in Sammy Watkins. That's a guy who, he'll get open. I don't think he's a bad receiver. And with the speed of Lamar, the same way he had Tyreek Hill, where he was just able to be consistent, 6, 7, 800-yard guy, I think that's something the Ravens needed. We saw that when the end of last year they had Des Bryant as their leading receiver. They need that consistent guy. And Sammy Watkins can definitely still add that to their offense. Their defense, they don't really lose much. You still have Marcus Peters. Marlon Humphrey really took a jump last year. And I think he's just going to continue to make those jumps. Patrick Queen, will look for him to take a jump next year. They drafted Jason Owa, who, speedy guy, he'll be really good for them. So I like what the Ravens did. The Ravens will, like I said, I'm saying the Ravens will win the NFC North. But if you're telling me the Browns did, if the Browns won the division, I wouldn't be surprised at all. Because the same way the Ravens improved, you could argue the Browns improved more. They bring in John Johnson. They just brought in Jadeveon Clowney recently. Baker Mayfield he's going to be Baker. If they can limit the amount that Baker has to do with the run game, which is what they did last year en route to the divisional round, then we know the Browns can be a good team. They did it last year. Odell will come back. The notion that the Browns are better without Odell is completely asinine to me. He's their best receiver by far. And, that doesn't always mean the guy who leads the team in catches. Jarvis Landry is Baker Mayfield's security blanket. He is the guy that's going to catch 100 passes, 90 passes, just because he's the one. Odell is the burner. He's the deep route guy. That doesn't mean he's not better than Jarvis Landry. And then when you look at the rest of them, we know the Browns have a good O-line. They bring in did they bring back Sheldon Richardson, or am I tripping? He's not popping up on their roster for me, so maybe I'm tripping about that. Maybe they lost Sheldon Richardson. But, they do bring in Jadeveon Clowney. They bring in Tack McKinley, who will be good depth for them. Grant Delpit is coming back this year. Unfortunately, he tore his Achilles in training camp last year. But, LSU guy, he adds a good dimension to that defense. He adds someone who can cover, who's not afraid to come down and hit. I'm going to butcher his name, but they added Jeremiah Owusu Koromoa, and I think he's a great pick. He was probably the second, third best linebacker in that draft. He was the top of my linebacker board for sure. You bring in Troy Hill. Like I said, you bring in John Johnson. Rodney Harrison, I think they got him last year, mid-season trade. Greg Newsome, who's a guy I wanted the Saints to draft, they got him. So the Browns also made really big improvements to places that they struggled. So if you tell me that the Browns won that division, I wouldn't be surprised at all. The only thing holding me back from picking the Browns is I trust Lamar Jackson a lot more than I trust Baker Mayfield at this point. And their supporting casts are similar. I think the Ravens defense, at least going off last year, is a little better. The Browns secondary struggled last year. But at the same time, they put themselves in a position to really alleviate some of those struggles. So the Browns and the Ravens it's going to be a dogfight. Like I said, I think the Ravens win the division by a game, tiebreaker, 2 games. All this is barring no major injuries, which it's football. It's going to happen, but it's just about who can be the most healthy. And so I'm picking the Ravens. I'm picking the Ravens to be 13-4 and the Browns to finish, 12-5 or 11-6. Would it be? Yeah, it would be 11-6. It's going to be a dogfight. It's going to come down to the last game or two. So that division is going to be really fun to watch. All right, just following the rule of north, south, east, west. Next up is going to be the AFC South, and quite easily the worst team in that division will be the Jacksonville Jaguars. You won 1 game last year for a reason, because you were a very bad team. Off rip, shout out to my boy Chris Claybrooks, one of my favorite users in Madden, and he just really turned into one of my favorite players. So hopefully he can stay on the roster. Last year he got some burn last year. So hopefully he stays in that same role. But the Jaguars, like I said, you don't get the first overall pick by being a good team that's going to win games next year. Urban Meyer is at the most unknown as an NFL head coach. Trevor Lawrence has looked good in preseason, but he's also looked like a rookie. And going back to Clemson, he just doesn't seem to have any self-preservation. There was a play against the Saints where they were down 14. It was the end of a quarter. They were driving. And keep in mind, this is a preseason game. This doesn't count. He is the starter. There's no argument about it. And he dives headfirst into 3 Saints to pick up a first down. And reading through some of the comments on a post about it, because I'm an LSU fan, I don't really care about Clemson. They were saying that he does that a lot. So Trevor Lawrence doesn't seem to have self-preservation, and at the NFL level, they will take your head off. And so if he does that, it might be a problem for him down the line. And I hope nothing comes of that, but it can't be understated that he needs to be able to slide or get down, or it will affect him at some point. I mean, Cam Newton was Superman, right? He never slid. He always took the hits. He always fought for them yards. And now he's 32, and it looks like he could be out of the league in the next year or two. So at some point, sooner or later, not having that self-preservation will come back to bite you. And with someone you took the first pick on, that's not something that you want. Last year, James Robinson was a bright spot for the Jaguars. I think that it's going to be the same thing this year. I think he is a bright spot for the Jags. Hopefully he can stay healthy like he did last year. We just found out that Travis Etienne will miss the whole season, so that's disappointing. You bring in Marvin Jones. I think nothing else. It's a shot at DJ Chark, who is just underwhelming as a receiver so far. He's fast. He has all the physical tools, but it just doesn't seem like from the coaches. Urban Meyer called him weak. So from what the coaches say, it just doesn't seem like he'll put the work in to be a number one receiver. They signed Tavon Austin, which is interesting. I think he's just a camp body. I highly doubt he stays on. Bringing in Philip Dorsett to stretch the field is good for them. Colin Johnson really came on towards the end of the year last year, so hopefully he can build on that. Laviska Shenault, same thing. They really looked good towards the end of the year. Hopefully they just can really build on some of this stuff. We know Josh Allen can rush the passer. He's good to borderline great sometimes. So hopefully he can stay there, stay where he needs to be. Miles Jack is obviously their best player. They take Dylan Moses late, and I like the pick. Dylan Moses was projected to be a first-round pick in 2019. He tears his ACL, misses all of 2019, and now he just got taken in the late draft. So I like the pick, though. I think Dylan Moses still does have potential. He struggled last year, but I think he can still really impact for this team. Caleb Von Chason, another one of my LSU boys. I want him to be successful, and hopefully he can. Last year was not very good for him, just speaking candidly and honestly. So hopefully he can really just take that jump, because the Jaguars desperately will need that pass rush. If he can just be good for them next to Josh Allen, that would be great. And that would be exactly what they need. But as of right now, the jury is still out on Caleb Von Chason. So hopefully he can take that jump. And I like what they did with their defense. They bring in Tyson Campbell. You draft Tyson Campbell in the second round, 33rd overall. That's your first pick. Tyson Campbell should add a good corner for them. That's something that they really struggled last year. You also draft Andre Sisco in the third round from Syracuse. You bring in Shaquille Griffin, right? And this is interesting. Here's why. You bring Shaquille Griffin in to be the number one, to take some responsibility off C.J. Henderson. And then you draft Tyson Campbell, who is also a corner. You still have Sidney Jones on your roster. So that has led to C.J. Henderson being brought up in trade talks. The Jaguars would be completely just, unless they know something that we don't about CJ, the Jags would be fools to trade CJ Henderson at this point. He's in his second year. He had a really up and down rookie year, but ultimately he showed a lot of potential. So I think it's too early to give up on him, but I don't know if Urban Meyer can do it. I don't know if he lasts the whole season. It wouldn't surprise me if he did. Obviously, he was a great college coach. That can definitely translate. But also, it wouldn't surprise me if he quit mid-year. It's up in the air. I don't see the Jags winning more than 4 or 5 games. I think Trevor Lawrence can win them some games, but I don't see it happening for them this year. And second, and not by much, maybe a game or two, is the Texans. So off rip, I have to say, we don't know what's happening with Deshaun Watson. We just don't. If he is guilty of what he's being accused of, he should not be playing in the NFL. And that, I think that goes without saying. It's up to like 22 or 23 women at this point. If he's guilty of what they're saying he's guilty of, or what they're accusing him of, he shouldn't play this year. But you never know how that's going to go. And until something happens with the case, the NFL won't suspend him, because that's how they pretty much handle their cases like that. because they don't want to wrongfully suspend someone just off allegations. So Deshaun Watson will probably be the starter this year. You bring in Mark Ingram, you bring in Phillip Lindsay to go with David Johnson. To me, that means David Johnson is probably getting pushed out. You have Mark Ingram to run between the tackles. You have Phillip Lindsay to be your pass catcher. That was David Johnson's role. So to me, that means that pretty much shows that David Johnson is someone who could be cut not too early or not too late into this preseason. Chris Conley's on the team now. You still have Brandon Cooks, who is criminally underrated. Brandon Cooks is off to a great start to his career, and he doesn't get the love I feel like he deserves. You draft Brevin Jordan in the 5th round. I think he's a good tight end with a lot of upside. It's gonna take a minute though. We know the O-line is not very good. That's something they struggled with last year. You trade J.J. Watt, or I don't know if it was a trade or you released J.J. Watt, but the point is he's no longer on the Texans, right? You have Shaq Lawson, who was it Shaq Lawson? No, Carlos Dunlap just got hurt for the year. So you have Shaq Lawson on the defense to replace him. You still have Zach Cunningham, who's one of the better linebackers in the league. Not better, but he's better than a lot of guys, especially at that position. There's just not a lot of talent here. You bring in Desmond King at corner. You still have Justin Reed, who's good. Bradley Roby, who's good. But the Texans, they're not a good football team. That's why Deshaun Watson wanted a trade in the first place. The Texans aren't a good team. They only won 4 games last year for a reason. And I don't see them winning much more this year. Especially if Deshaun Watson doesn't play. The Texans could very well have the first pick next year. Third in that division is going to be the Colts. I think this is one of those divisions who will have the biggest gap between teams. I think the Colts are going to be a 10-win team. Last year they played pretty good football. They lost in the playoffs with Phillip Rivers at quarterback. Contrary to popular belief, I do think that Carson Wentz is an upgrade over Phillip Rivers, especially at this point in Phillip Rivers' career. That's why he retired last year. But, Carson Wentz, he's injured right now, and so is Quentin Nelson. And the timetable for when those guys come back will definitely have an impact on how good this team can be. But, the defense is solid. Jonathan Taylor will take a jump in his second year. I really think this team will be good if they can get Quentin Nelson and Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz back relatively soon. Looking down their team, Michael Pittman is a guy who we're obviously looking to make a jump this year. You traded for DeForest Buckner last year. You draft Kwity Paye. Kwity Paye, the first round, it will be an instant playmaker for that defense. He will really inject something that defense needs, especially on that back end, getting the pass rush. I think that's great for them. You bring in Xavier Rhodes. You brought him in last year, so he's still there. Hopefully he can teach those young guys something. We always know about Dennis Leonard, Bobby Okereke. So the Colts have a good defense. We know this. Hopefully their offense is better this year with Carson Wentz coming back. But I think the Colts win probably, like I said, 10, 11 games, 9 games around there. And then the best team in that division is obviously the Tennessee Titans. I think that goes without saying. Ryan Tannehill, who is another guy that Adam Gase ruined and was promptly unruined after he left Adam Gase. We know about Derrick Henry, second straight season of 2,000 yards. We know what Derrick Henry brings to the table and his ability. And huge thing, they have A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown is the number 1 receiver in this league. But that wasn't good enough for them. So they traded for Julio Jones. Julio Jones is on the Titans this year. So that begs the question of what's going to happen to the Titans offense. Derrick Henry, is he going to get the same touches he did last year? To me, it's an easy answer. It's no. I don't think he reaches 2,000 yards this year. I think, he'll be over the 1,000-yard mark because it's Derrick Henry. You're not going to stop that. But I think adding Julio makes the Titans want to pass the ball more, and adding Julio to A.J. Brown just makes this team dangerous because they can air it out. It makes them very dangerous for this reason. They can air it out in September, October, and by the time it gets to November, December, January, you have Derrick Henry, fresher than most years, who nobody wants to tackle him in September, let alone in December when they're cold, right? So you have a more fresh Derrick Henry to really just pound the rock. I like that move. I really like having Julio Jones on this team now. Looking at their defense, they took Caleb Farley in the first round, another guy that I really wanted my Saints to draft. He's going to be absolutely incredible for them. You lose Adoree Jackson, so hopefully Caleb Farley can quickly fill that role and fill that void. And if he can't, then he can't. But I think the Titans win 12, 13, maybe even 14 games next year and finish as a top 4 seed in the AFC. Obviously, they'll win their division. But I like what the Titans really did last year. Next up, we have the AFC least. Last place in that division is going to be the Jets. You know, the Jets drafted Zach Wilson second overall. I don't have a problem with this pick. I don't know that he's better than Trey Lance. He's definitely not better than Justin Fields. But I like the pick for the Jets. He really fits in with what they want to do. And he's definitely an upgrade for Sam Darnold because they actually want to work with him. Next up, the running backs. Tevin Coleman is here. That's really it. They're going to struggle again to run the ball. At receiver, you have Jamison Crowder. You bring in Corey Davis, who's coming off of his best year. So we'll see if that was a flash in the pan or if he can consistently be that. And I really want to watch Denzel Mims. I think he could make a big jump this year. Coming out of Baylor last year, he was pretty hyped, and he just didn't really do much of anything last year. Their defensive line is one of the best thing about the Jets. Quinnen Williams, after being called a bust the last couple of years, he really stepped up last year. They bring in Sheldon Rankins, who, when he's available, is incredible. That's how he was for the Saints. The problem was he wasn't available a whole lot. So if he can stay healthy, that'll be huge for them. Getting C.J. Mosley healthy is another thing that the Jets really need to work on. I'm really struggling to find things about the Jets. There's just not a whole lot to say. They're not very good. You bring back LaMarcus Joyner. Marcus May is really good. He's probably one of the lone bright spots on that team, right with Quinnen Williams. So they'll definitely be someone to watch. Lose a lot of games, but I think they'll be a fun loser. I think Zach Wilson makes them entertaining. That's about as much as I have to say about the Jets. Zach Wilson just makes them entertaining. Third in that division, I have the Dolphins, mostly because of Tua. We don't know what Tua is yet. He struggled last year. He had some games where he looked like he could be a starter, and he looked some games where Ryan Fitzpatrick replaced him. So we don't know what Tua is at this point in his career. Hopefully his second year really just solidifies his role and how he's going to play for that team. Or it makes them realize that he's never going to be that guy from Alabama again. They really like Myles Gaskin. I'm lower on him than the Dolphins, but if that's their guy, that's their guy. So, I'm not going to claim to know more than NFL players, NFL scouts. You bring in Will Fuller. He is injured right now, but I still really do think that that's really a great pickup for them. Will Fuller is a deep threat. I said he's injured, and that's really the main problem, is that he is always injured. So hopefully he can get back on the field and be available for them. You draft Jalen Waddle, who is the burner. A lot of people really think he's Tyreek Hill 2.0, and I think he's a better route runner than Tyreek Hill was out of college. I think Jalen Waddle can really run routes really well. Not only that, obviously he has the track speed, and I think I really like Jalen Waddle. I wish he wouldn't have gone to Miami. Not that I have anything against Miami, but I would have liked to see him in a more fun place for me to watch. Their defense is going to be solid. We know that head coach Brian Flores is going to coach a great defense. I really like Jerome Baker. I think he's one of the better young linebackers in the league, and hopefully he can play up to that this year. You draft Jalen Phillips, who's a pass rush linebacker. Hopefully he can take the jumps that he needs to. You have Justin Coleman now. I'm not sure if he was on the team last year, but I really do like the pickup of Javon Holland, safety from Javon Holland is from Stanford, I want to say. You drafted him in the second round. I like his range. I think he's a great young safety, someone who can be the backbone of their defense that Minka Fitzpatrick was supposed to be after he got moved from corner to safety. Xavier Howard, we know what he is. Noah Igbinoghene played really well last year. He had his moments. Byron Jones, we know Byron Jones is one of the top tier corners, and they bring in Jason McCourty. So their defense is gonna be great once again this year, but because of Tua, because they really don't seem to have a semblance of a running game, I can't pick them to win more than 8 games this year. Second, we have the Patriots. Now, with the Patriots, I think the Patriots can win 10, 11 games this year. I just do. It's one of my hotter takes. I'm either going to be really right or really wrong. And I don't think it's going to be because of Mac Jones. I think Cam Newton will lead this team to the playoffs. Cam Newton will show that he still has it left. He still has something in the tank, and he leads the Patriots back to the playoffs. I obviously think they're going to be a wild card. I picked them second for a reason. But they built this team around Cam Newton. You know, they bring in receivers. They bring in 2 Pro Bowl tight ends so they can run those run-heavy sets with Damian Harris that Cam Newton feels comfortable in. And that's the main proponent against Mac Jones as the starter, is that the Patriots built this team around Cam Newton. They brought in guys that make him comfortable to run the offense that Cam Newton wants to run. Mac Jones can run that offense, but they built it around Cam, so he's the day one starter. On defense, you don't lose much. You bring in Matt Judon from the Ravens, who is exceptional at what he does. We know the offensive line is good. You still have Henry Anderson on defense. Chase Vinovich. You get Donta Hightower back, who sat out last year because of COVID. Raekwon McMillan, who I thought was a good pickup, but he unfortunately has an ACL injury right now. I think Kyle Duggar can really take that next step this year. We'll be interested to see if J.C. Jackson plays the same way he did last year, or if it was a flash in the pan, or if maybe this is the year, finally, that Stephon Gilmore gets traded, because that's been a rumor for the last, it seems like 3 seasons, is that the Patriots would deal Stephon Gilmore. Hasn't happened yet, but maybe this is the year. Like I said, I think the Patriots will win 10 games. The Bills will win that division. I like the Bills to be the 1 or the 2 seed next year. Depends on how hard the Chiefs play. If they really gun for that 1st seed, or if they take the approach of, we have Patrick Mahomes, so we can coast this year. But Josh Allen really took a step last year. So this upcoming season, we'll see if he can take a second step and really get into being the guy he's supposed to be. Matt Breida is a good pickup for them. Hopefully he can be the guy he was in San Francisco. We'll see this year for sure if it was a system thing or if he can be a number one running back. They still have Devin Singletary, who plays really well for them. Stephon Diggs had his best season yet so far. I don't really like Stephon Diggs. I'm not going to go into that. You do bring in Emmanuel Sanders, who will be a consistent 2, which is something they didn't really have last year. And Cole Beasley will be in the slot. On defense, you still have Mario Addison. AJ Epensa is another guy who we'll see if he can make that jump. He didn't play much last year. Ed Oliver is one of the best defensive tackles in the league. And they also drafted Gregory Rousseau, who's a guy who slipped in the draft, but should have gone higher than he did. He went 30th. Wouldn't surprise me at all if he has one of the better rookie seasons for edge rushers. Trey Edmonds is one of the fastest linebackers in the league. That's the reason why their defense is so good against the run. Matt Milano had his best season last year. Micah Hyde is still good. Teron Johnson. We'll see if he can play well last year. He was in the slot a lot last year. So hopefully he can stay in that role. We know Tre'Davious White is one of the best corners in football. Jonathan Poyer is really solid for them at safety. I think like I said, the Bills will challenge for the 1 seed in the AFC. They'll be the 1 or the 2. Yeah, the Bills they were good last year. They only got better. So we'll see how this season plays out for them, barring injuries, barring all of that. Next up, the AFC West. And last in the AFC West, I have the Broncos. When you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And I don't think they have 2 quarterbacks. However, I don't think that they feel confident in either one. Teddy Bridgewater is limited, but his floor is a lot higher than Drew Lock's floor. However, Drew Lock's ceiling is a lot higher than Teddy Bridgewater's ceiling. And seeing if Drew Lock can reach that ceiling is way more advantageous to the Broncos than just having a consistent Teddy Bridgewater. So I think Drew Lock will start the season for them. At running back, Melvin Gordon, one of my personal favorite running backs in the NFL. He had 1,000 yards last year. There's no reason why he won't get to 1,000 yards this year, barring injury. You lose Philip Lindsay. His name escaped me for a second. But you lose Philip Lindsay, and I think that's strategic. I think they made their decision. They picked Melvin Gordon. Jerry Jeudy. We know Jerry Jeudy can be one of the best route runners in football. It's just about whether or not he will still have the drops that he did last year. I mean, he had like 5 or 6 drops in one game last year, and that proves how bad really the problem was for him. So if he can get those drops under control, we know he can be one of the top receivers in football. KJ Hamler, burner from Penn State, is another guy that I think can make that jump. Cortland Sutton, he's still coming back from that ACL. When he does come back, I think the Broncos can have a lethal offense. It's just about whether or not they can get past the quarterback position. The Broncos defense is going to be once again pretty good. Their defensive line, there's no really big names. They just play well. Bradley Chubb is one of the best rushers in football. Same thing with Von Miller. Von Miller, was hurt all of last year. So Von Miller and Bradley Chubb this year really make their pass rush what it is. Bryce Callahan, who's coming off his best season. You also bring in Ronald Darby and Kyle Fuller. So, their defense is going to improve. You also re-signed Justin Simmons this offseason. So he'll be coming to prove that he was worth that money. You have Caden Stearns, who will play behind Kareem Jackson this year and will learn and hopefully be able to take that starting spot for him next year in the future. And then you have Patrick Surtain to hopefully be the slot guy next to Kyle Fuller and Bryce Callahan. So I like the Broncos defense. I think they made jumps. I still don't think they win more than 6 or 7 games just because of their quarterback situation. I don't feel like Drew Lock will make the necessary jumps that he needs to. And I don't think that Teddy Bridgewater, being the 4th best quarterback in that division, really does much of anything for them. Now, second or third in that division is a toss-up. If you told me you think the Chargers finished second in that division, I wouldn't fault you for that. If you told me the Raiders finished third in that division, I also wouldn't fault you for that. But for my list, I'm going to pick the Chargers in third. I don't like the head coach hire. I don't know much about the dude, so I'm not going to speak too much, but there were better candidates out there. I don't know that he helps Justin Herbert the same way some of the other guys would, but Herbert is the unequivocal starter this year. He had an amazing rookie season, record-breaking rookie season, so hopefully he stays healthy, they protect him, and he's able to really take that second leap and he doesn't have a sophomore slump. Austin Eckler showed that he can be a number one running back last year. When he's in the game, he's great. So hopefully he can stay healthy. You bring in Jared Cook, Mr. Fumble himself. We know what Keenan Allen is. He's great. You still have KJ Hill. You still have Mike Williams, who is inconsistent, but last year was the most consistent year of his career. And I think Justin Herbert played a good part in that. You lose Hunter Henry, but like I said, you do replace him with Jared Cook, who's not going to give you the same in the blocking category, but he'll be even better as a pass catcher. Obviously, they still have Joey Bosa. They still have Linval Joseph. So Jeremy Tillery. Their defense is still great. They still have one of the better D-lines in football. Kenneth Murray had a great rookie season. Hopefully he comes back the same way. Drew Tranquill, who broke his arm or tore his ACL. He had a major injury in that Cincinnati game week 1 of last year. So he'll be back healthy this year. You have Chris Harris still on defense, one of the better corners in football. Derwin James getting back healthy this year. Hopefully he can go back to that trajectory he was. Derwin James is so versatile, and I just hope that he can be healthy this year. Asante Samuel Jr., one of the better slot corners in college football last year. So hopefully he can be what he's supposed to be. I think the Chargers win, 7-8 games. I think they're right there with the Raiders, who I'm going to pick in second in this division. So here we go. The Raiders. Derek Carr, criminally underrated. Underrated and overhated is how I would describe Derek Carr. He's definitely not as bad as everyone likes to paint him as. He's consistent. He's consistent over the course of a season. Game to game, he's inconsistent. He'll have one of the best games of his career, and then he'll follow that up with one of the worst games statistically. But over the course of the season, when you look back, he is very consistent. Josh Jacobs is their bruiser. He's their every down back, and then Kenyon Drake is their third down back. They have one of the better fullbacks in football, one of the only teams with a true fullback still, and that's Alec Ingold. Trey, right? Yeah, Trey Ragas has looked very good in preseason, so I think he's the running back 3 this year. Their offensive line will be interesting to watch. They take Alex Leatherwood early last year, probably earlier than they should have, but that doesn't mean he can't be a good player for them. I don't think they are in the market to just lose a whole bunch of games, especially with the new stadium. And last year they lost out on all that revenue. So if they didn't feel like the O-line would improve by getting rid of all the guys they did, I don't think they make those moves. But I don't really see it personally. But hey, that's the moves they made. We know what Darren Waller is. We know he's one of the top 4 tight ends in football. Henry Ruggs, hopefully Henry Ruggs can really take that second jump this year. He really struggled in his rookie year. He wasn't very good at all. So hopefully he can be that wide receiver 2 that they need. Hunter Renfrow, big play Renfrow, third down Renfrow. He's really the guy on the Raiders that makes those catches, those third and longs. That's who they look for. Bryan Edwards, who didn't play a whole lot last year. He was a third-round pick, but he has great size. He's 6'3". He has great speed. So I really hope that's someone they utilize this year. You bring in John Brown and you bring in Willie Snead. I think more than anything, as insurance packages, if those starters don't pan out the way that you think they will. I think that's why those guys get brought in. Max Crosby doesn't get a whole lot of respect, but he's one of the good young pass rushers. Gerald McCoy, they bring him in, who's past his prime, but I do think Gerald McCoy can still add something to this Raiders team. If nothing else, he can be a presence in the locker room. Yannick Ngakoue, I think there's a chance that he can recapture that same level of play he had in Jacksonville. He doesn't have the corner play and the secondary play he had in Jacksonville. That does help as a defensive lineman. But he was good. He was good last year. So hopefully he just, he can be as good as he was before. They still have Carl Nassib, who's great depth on that team. I'm happy for him being who he is and feeling, comfortable enough to be open about it. Nick Kwiatkowski had his best year of his career last year. On the complete opposite spectrum of Corey Littleton, who probably had the worst year of his career last year. So hopefully they can switch roles and not switch roles. We want them both to be good, preferably. In the secondary, I think that I like picking back up on Carl Joseph. I think that allows Jonathan Abram to be more of a linebacker, which is what he wants to be. He wants to hit people, and his coverage really does show that he just wants to hit people. They have 2 rookie corners last year, and Damon Arnett and who's the other guy? Meek Robinson. So hopefully those guys take sophomore jumps and not sophomore slumps. Trevon Moehrig should start at free safety. I don't think there's anyone over him. I do like Casey Hayward. I think Casey Hayward he's obviously one of the better corners in football, but I think he'll be great for those rookies. Trayvon Mullen is their starter. But the best player on the Raiders defense through the preseason has been Nate Hobbs. Nate Hobbs flies around, he flies to the ball, he makes the tackles, and he's a corner. They play him more at safety, I think, but he flies to the ball. They send him on nickel blitzes. He gets to the quarterback. He had a spectacular strip sack in their first or second preseason game, or their first preseason game, and it reminded me of the play that Tyrann Mathieu had in his Heisman finalist year, where he ran untouched and he got the ball first before he even worried about hitting the quarterback. It was one of the best plays I've seen a rookie make. So hopefully Nate Hobbs is someone they continue to really just incorporate in their game plans. If their O-line holds up, the Raiders aren't a bad team. The Raiders have been 6-3 the last 2 years. I don't see a reason for that to change. And hopefully this year they can turn that 6-3 into 10-7 or 11-6. Just not 7-10 like they have been. On to who I think will be the best team in that division. Obviously, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. That goes without saying. Patrick Mahomes he's Patrick Mahomes. At this point, about Patrick Mahomes. I don't need to waste time telling you about him. Clyde Edwards-Helaire out of LSU he's solid. I think that they more punched out his role this year, which is great. I don't think he's an every down back, but he can still add a lot to their team. You still have Tyreek Hill. You still have Mecole Hardman. You still have Travis Kelce. That's really all they have at receiver, though. They lost Sammy Watkins. So I don't know who's going to fill that role. If they don't even need anyone to fill that role. Travis Kelce, Tyreek Hill, that's really all you need to be successful, especially when you have Patrick Mahomes throwing them the ball. They replaced their O-line this year. They made a huge O-line trade. I want to say, did they not trade for Ronnie Stanley? Not Ronnie Stanley. It was Orlando Brown. So they trade for Orlando Brown. They bring Joe Thuney in. The Chiefs really improved after that Super Bowl loss. They didn't sit back on their laurels. They really improved. Their defense is the same. You still have Chris Jones. You still have Alex Okafor, Frank Clark. There's really not a whole lot to say on defense for them. They didn't really add anything. They didn't really lose anything. Tyrann Mathieu, still amazing. L'Jarius Sneed, hopefully he can take a second-year jump. Same thing with Juan Thornhill. Hopefully he can take a second-year jump. But it's the Chiefs. There's not a whole lot. What do you want me to say? What do you want me to say about the Chiefs? They've been to 2 straight Super Bowls. Arguably, you could say even they should have made the 3 straight Super Bowls. Like it's the Chiefs. We know what they are, and it's just about, can someone challenge them en route to the Super Bowl next year? So finally, my final AFC standings. I have the Chiefs as the 1 seed at 14-3. The Bills, the 2 seed at 12-5, or even 13-4. The Titans will be 12-5 at the 3 seed. The Ravens will be 11-6 at the 4 seed. I think the Browns will also be 11-6 with the 5 seed. The Colts will be 10-7, and the final wildcard team will be the Patriots at 9-8. It'll be interesting to watch. The AFC is better than it's been in a while. I think there's a lot of teams who can legitimately challenge the Chiefs. It's just about injuries and how they're gonna, fall, how the cards will fall. So that's my AFC preview. Next episode will be the NFC preview and who I think will win Super Bowls and all the stuff like that. Y'all have to wait a week for that episode. So thank you guys for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comment, tell me all the ways that I'm wrong. I'm here for it. I'll read every comment. I'll argue with y'all. It's all good. Just tell me what you think, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.